All right, readers. Those clocks, they are striking 13, so let us begin. Today, we have got The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. On its inception, it was called by critics the veriest trash. Love those critics. It has sold over 20 million copies to date. For the lazy, there is a Cliff Notes. It's not in the top 10. Thank God most people are reading the book and not the notes by Cliff. Gonna get to that book in just a moment. First of all, gotta get to some news and notes from around the reading world. Coming out this week, released on January 20th, we've got Lost Lake by Sarah Addison Allen. You got Orfeo by Richard Powers. This Man Confessed by Jodi Ellen Moppus. Silence and Eve by, Iris Johansson or Johansson. No clue how to pronounce it, but at least it's a familiar name. There's a new Halo book coming out. There's a new Doctor Who book coming out. No doubt, fans of those genres will buy it up by the millions. We've also got The Last Days of California by Mary Miller. There is Hunting Shadows by Charles Todd. And a new Game of Thrones graphic novel coming out. Authored by George R.R. Martin, of course. Again, fans of the genre, it's going to sell millions and millions of copies. Finally coming out this week is Beating Obamacare in 2014. Not to belittle the book, but you want to beat Obamacare, just don't sign up. Pay your fine at tax time. They've got your social security number. They got you down on file. You sign up or you pay it. That's all there is to it. All right, moving on. New York Times bestsellers list. Got a little bit of movement on the Big Easy list this week. Not at the top, though. Top 2, still, Sycamore Row by John Grisham. Been up there for 11 weeks. It is, of course, the sequel to his former bestseller, A Time to Kill. Still at number 2, Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. Also been up there for 11 weeks. Still haven't gotten to that book yet. Feel bad. One day it is on the to-be-read list for me. A couple new guys, though. Coming in at number 6 is The Big Sky Secrets by Linda Lale Miller. First week up there, and also first week on the Big Easy's list. Coming in at 7 is Hazardous Duty by W.E.B. Griffin and Will Butterworth. Love those books where you got the co-author. All right, screw all the other news. I want to get into Huckleberry Finn. First off, we have got to take a break from this week's sponsor. Be back with Huckleberry Finn right after this. Today's book report is brought to you by Whores. Got something your girl won't do? How about something you're ashamed to even do to her, you little kinky? That's why there's Whores. Little legal disclaimer here. Do not see a whore. It is illegal and you will be arrested for solicitation of a prostitute. Who knows what that type of legal mumbo-jumbo is all about? Anyway, hire a whore. Dress them up, let them dress you up. Whatever you can afford, they will do. Don't just pay some pillhead $20 to lay there and take a pounding. Save up a couple $100, get a professional, and get fucked just like those dudes on the internet when you hire a whore today. Oh, right then, Huck Finn. Now, what sucks about talking about Huck Finn is anytime you do discuss it, you have to talk about whether it's racist or not. That is the elephant in the room, and I hate that phrase. Well, racism, yes, but elephant in the room. Of course you're going to notice an elephant in the room. You're going to notice an elephant in a field. Hell, you go to the zoo and you notice an elephant. And then you think about making a pool ball set and some piano keys and wasted meat. But anyway, besides that, wouldn't you just notice a room big enough for an elephant? Like, goddamn, this guy's doing good for himself. Get that elephant out of here before he shits on this guy's floor. Anyway, the reason Huck Finn is a lot of times considered racist is because that word that we used to use to disparage blacks is used in this book a lot. I mean, a whole lot. It gets uncomfortable at times. It even happened to me when I was rereading it for this show. You get uncomfortable just reading it over and over and over again. For the non-readers out there, think of the movie Django Unchained, Tarantino's newest flick. You hear it so much, it's just beaten into you. You start to agree with Spike Lee like, Jesus, this is racist. And it's been courted enough that you have to give the people that find it that way some credence. When enough people find something to be, it probably kind of is. I mean, as a matter of fact, the word is used over 200 times in the novel. I believe the exact count is 219 times. And who counted? Is that some guy's job, just sit there and count it? Gotta be tedious work. And really, it comes down to when this book was taught in schools. Kids were forced to stand up and read this in front of their classes. And, of course, black kids in their formative years were uncomfortable reading it in front of others. But Huck Finn, Mark Twain's always been taught, and he should be taught, just not at that lower level school level of... This is a book for college kids. It's got complex ideas. It's not Tom Sawyer. Tom Sawyer is more of a kid's book. Still a fun read, still a great read. But Huck Finn is later Mark Twain. It's complex. It's one of the last novels he ever wrote when he was a changed man. He lost his faith in God and really in humanity. Just read The Mysterious Stranger if you want further evidence of that. But anyway, anytime something is considered racist, people want to change it. For instance, it's a couple years old now, but New South Books published a new edition of Huck Finn, where they took out that N-word and they replaced it with the word slave. Now, some critics, my favorite critic of it, I forget who said it. I can't give him his due, I apologize. But he points out that everyone has been slaves throughout the course of human history. So it loses some power in the novel because you don't know it's talking about black people because it just says slave. Now, and let's not give New South Books any credence or credit. They're not doing this to be nice. They're not doing this because they're concerned about people. They're releasing this edition to make money. That's all they want. That's all businesses do, is they try to take. Well, of course, they try to take it by making money. That's all they want. And especially with a book so popular and still trying to be taught in schools, but it can't be because of the words. So what do? You have people you're trying to sell to. They can't sell a product. So you give them a replacement product. That's all they want. They're trying to get this book back into schools by giving us this gentle edition. Excuse me. Watered down edition is more like it. And honestly, I hope no one does read this new edition of New South Books. But if they do, there's hope. Because anyone who enjoys it, which most who read this book do enjoy it, it's a great work. If they read the New South edition, guess what they're going to do? They're going to go out and they're going to buy the real version of the book. Because like if you have a movie, you love it, then you find out there's a director's cut. You go out and you find that director's cut because you don't want to know what the studios cut it down to and made it into. You want the creator's version of it, the real version of it. So anyone who does read the New South version and enjoys it, they're going to get the real book. So, hey, the Mark Twain estate can make some more money, and they deserve it a lot more than these assholes at New South. And speaking of changing books, got a great quote here from the fire chief in general of book burners, Mr. Ray Bradbury. When asked about changing his own masterpiece, Fahrenheit 451, what did he have to say? In sum, do not insult me with your beheadings, finger choppings, or the lung deflations you plan for my works. I need my head to shake or nod, my hand to wave or make into a fist, my lungs to shout or whisper with. I will not go gently onto a shelf degutted to become a non-book. All you umpires, back to the bleachers. Referees, hit the showers. It's my game. I pitch, I hit, I catch. I run the bases. At sunset, I've won or lost. At sunrise, I'm out again, giving it the old try, and no one can help me, not even you. Powerful words from the book burner. And New South Books probably should have read that quote before trying to make money on someone else's work. And like I said in the opening, of Ladies and Children Not Admitted, of course, that's the name of the play by the King and the Duke later on in Huck Finn. They used that phrase just to make some money, but it lends some credence to this novel. It's probably not a book for kids. Keep it away from your kids because they're not formed enough to understand the complex ideas laid forth in it. And in general, Mark Twain's a satirist. He's a humorist. And yes, there's nothing funny or even remotely funny about such an ugly, ugly word. So why is it used so much? Maybe he's satire in the way good people talk. And back then it was good Christian church-going people. You couldn't separate the two. In the 1800s, if you were a good person, you were a good church-going person and you expected to go to heaven. And you used this word a whole hell of a lot. Mark Twain found that ironic. So what does a satirist do? He satires what he sees as people thinking is good behavior. And how do you show it's not good behavior? By just pounding it into your head over and over and over again until the point becomes uncomfortable, until the point where you don't want to see, read, or hear it anymore. A good way to get it out of everyday verbiage, and I think that's what he was trying to do. So, again, keep it out of the grade schools. Do not buy the New South edition. And really, when it comes down to it, Muslims are the ones who should be pissed at this book. Not just because a lot of them are black, but the way Muslims are portrayed in Huck Finn is hilarious. To keep Jim safe, quote unquote, the King and the Duke dress him up as a Muslim. How do they do this? They put him in King Lear's curtain calico gown and paint him blue until the point that he looks dead and drowned, as Huck observes. So maybe this was how we used to think of Muslims. They were blue people in robes. Kind of funny. Think of Muslims as, those tall creatures from the boring-ass Avatar movie. But hey, that's how they thought of it. And really, also something other critics have pointed out that I love is that this was really the first book where a black man was one of the main characters. Really, the only other examples in the 1800s of a black man being a main character, well, you've got Uncle Tom's Cabin, which itself has been pointed out as stereotypical and kind of racist. 12 Years a Slave, the slave narrative. It came out, I believe it was 30 years before Huck Finn. Check on that number here in a second. The only other black character in literature was Queequeg from Moby Dick. For those who haven't read Moby Dick, and I can't blame you for not picking up that boring-ass long book, of Queequeg, a black man, was a cannibal, covered in tribal tattoos, and he chucked a spear. Doesn't sound racist at all to anybody? Well, it's probably not called racist because no one's read it, because it's long and it's boring, whereas Adventures of Huckleberry Finn is engaging. It's a good read. It's a funny read. It's from America's most beloved author. More to that in a second. We got to take a quick break here, folks. One quick point before we do cut to commercial. Huck Finn, in it, there's a lot of plain talk. People talked a lot plainer than we do today. So plain that later on in the book, there's a girl named Susan with a hair lip. So how is Susan referred to for the rest of the novel? She's not in it much, but she's always referred to as Hair Lip Susan. Plain talk from plain people. I gotta go to break. Back with more on Huck Finn next. Now introducing Fuck You Cigarettes, everybody. They're straight from Kentucky's bluegrass region. These bad boys don't have filters and are for real smokers. You get annoyed by that annoying voice? Excuse me, sir, could you extinguish that, please? Tell them no, not anymore. Tell them all, fuck you. I'm smoking with Fuck You cigarettes. Available now. Now, with a book that has caused so much controversy, you have to wonder why a guy like Ernest Hemingway, a lot of people's favorite American author, would declare such a bold statement as all things literary in America start with one novel, and that novel is Huckleberry Finn. T.S. Eliot even calls this the great American novel. And why? Well, think back to your English classes. That word theme your English teachers were always talking about. What is the theme of a book? What is this book all about? Huckleberry Finn is all about freedom. To get back to the is this racist or not statement, this is also an anti-slavery book. Mark Twain saw the world around him. He didn't like it. He knew at the inception of our country, it was about men wanting to be free. That's what America was about. And that's the theme of this book. I mean, think back to the beginning of the novel. Huck is in what would you think of as a good place. He's under the care and tutelage of the widow, Mrs. Watson. But Huck feels hindered by Miss Watson. She gets him new clothes, she keeps him indoors, she teaches him etiquette and Sunday school rules. But Huck doesn't like them. He has to free himself from her. Well, and of course, this ends him up in a bad spot. He ends up under his drunken white trash father. And like with most white trash kids, he ends up chained to a bed. And Huck does end up getting himself free. He has to cut a hole in the side of the cabin to get himself out. He has to fake his own death with the blood of a pig. He goes about it all pretty good, faking his own death. He does it so well, in fact, he declares Tom Sawyer even would have been proud of him. So now when Huck gets free, he's getting ready to leave town when he runs into Jim. Jim is also trying to get free. So the two set off together on a raft, and they head north. Well, heading north, this is always thought of as a southern book, but look at a map of America real quick. This book takes place in Missouri. It's not that far south. This is what back then would have been thought of as the heartland of America. Back where the rivers cut through our country, and that's really how big our country is. They have to escape north to Illinois. Illinois and Missouri are not that far apart, but they know it's going to take weeks to get there. Another just case of how big we are, and really the difference a couple imaginary lines of statehood make, especially if you're a black man. Just to cross those lines, he would now be free. What else are they getting free from in this book? Religion. This is late on in Mark Twain's life when, of course, he was losing faith in God, and he wanted to Huck, a kid who was probably a younger version of himself, Homer Tom Sawyer. He wanted them to be free from even the religious ways. Like the widow Watson. God bless her, she was a good Christian woman, but types like Miss Watson, they love rapscallions and deadbeats. That is the kind they take interest in. Why? Because they have to save them from their evil ways. Huck is happy with his evil ways, but he knows that he shouldn't be. It's something else. It's just the way of thinking that Mark Twain was trying to satirize and get free from, was just the ways Americans thought. He's also trying to get free from the noble sensibilities. Combing, dressing up. He didn't like them. Huck wanted to free himself from these things. Later on in the book, you realize that Huck is free from the ties of family. Now, family is important. Nothing can be more important than family. They can build you up. Not in the case of Huck, where he has a drunken father who beats him and chains him to a bed. But later on, you got the Shepherdsons and the Grandersons. They have a family feud that goes back so far, nobody can remember why it even started. Huck is free from such ties of family and shooting at people just because a feud started that no one remembers why. Then we get the bad guys of the novel, the dukes and the kings. Well, it's singular. It's one duke, it's one king, but it's something Americans should be free of. They are free from the ways of the old world, and we are free from the tyranny and rule, oppression of dukes and kings. So, this master humorist, who does he make his bad guys in this book? A duke and a king. And what are a duke and a king? They are charlatans. They take people's money for no good reason. Well, they don't take it. They trick people into giving it by putting on things like plays and speeches. They are charlatans. Huck notices that Tom Sawyer would like these schemers. They would get along just fine. That's where, at the introduction of this, I talked about Ladies and Children Not Admitted. That was a play put on by the Duke and the King. They tricked the townfolk. That's all that was they know it doesn't matter the content. If you put on a play that ladies and children are not admitted, the menfolk of the county are going to think, wow, this is something I can't miss out on. I will check this out. And they do, and they give them money in droves. Now, right before this, one of the best parts of the book, Mr. Sherburne gives a speech on being a man. He knows that the town is mostly not full of men. This is funny because it's 130 years ago. I mean, now we're saying we're a womanized culture, but even back then, Mark Twain was talking about how men don't act like men. Sherburne's speech includes Southern justice, which all it is a mob mentality. They want to hang him for shooting a man who deserves to be shot. And he stands his ground. He tells them, there is not a man amongst you. If there was, you would string me up. But there's not a man here. Now go back to your homes and leave me be, which, of course, they do. They don't just go to their homes. They go and see the Duke and the King's play. And instead of being men and running this Duke and this King out of town, what do? They go quietly into the night, and they let other townsmen get tricked and give up their money too, just to not be the laughingstock of the town. This happens right after Sherburne's speech on not being a man, and it's placed perfectly in the novel because it proves Sherburne right. When watching this play, what is Huck's reaction? It was enough to make a body ashamed of the human race. To watch that Duke and that King up there, just tricking people, not even putting on a show. He just crawls around on all fours, naked as the day he was born. The people hate it, but they won't admit it or tell anybody because they want everyone else to be tricked the same as they were. Eventually, Huck and Jim do get free from the Duke and the King. And again, once they do, they're on the raft. They're floating smoothly down the river, and they like to sit around naked smoking. It's funny to think of now. It's a grown man in Jim. It's a 13-year-old boy in Huck. Nowadays, of course, the man he'd be drug out of town and shot as a pedophile, which is why I don't see why this ain't the official book of Nambla. Those fucked up dudes. A boy and a man floating on a raft. It should be right up their alley. So they float and they smoke and they have a good old time until we come towards the book's conclusion. We're going to get into the book's conclusion next. Real quick break. We'll be right back with you next. It's the Pollock Clown Company. Throwing a shindig at home? Got a bachelorette party? How about a kid's birthday or bar mitzvah? Don't trust your entertainment needs to an unproven commodity. Hire that barely out of helmet race of neartards your parents and grandparents relatives have been laughing at since a time out of mind. Guaranteed to draw giggles out of even the toughest crowd. Pollocks have been the laughingstock of the world since our globes were flat and our books were on parchment. Don't let those kiddos be the first to miss out and hire the Pollock Clown Company for your next in-home entertainment. And be sure to tell your friends and coworkers to laugh at a Pollock right now. Alright, real quick, before we get to the end, a couple quick notes of the mindset of the people from back then. Of course, one of the more famous parts of the book is where Huck is thinking about turning in Jim. He knows that is his good Christian, law-abiding duty. To not turn in Jim is a hell-worthy offense. And, of course, famously, Huck does not care. He would rather go to hell than to turn in his friend Jim. Another mindset of the day and age, at one point while floating down the river, Huck and Jim come upon a wrecked steamboat. Now, on this wrecked steamboat is a gang of bandits, thieves, murderers, rapists. And Huck knows that this boat's about to drown. While these men are deserving of death, Huck knows, again, it is a hell-worthy offense just simply to let these men drown. So he plots out to get to land, find the proper authorities, so these men can be hung and the thing is done right. Again, the master satirist just pointing out the mindset of the people of the day and age, and of course poking fun at that mindset. Now, in going into the final chapters, Jim is owed. Quick note, the only people in this novel to sell a man are the King and the Duke. Why? Again, Mark Twain is making fun of old world ways. Kings and dukes can sell people. That's what the old world does, but not Americans. Americans should not sell people. That's why in this book, no American does. Only a king and a duke do. Now, to free good old Jim, what does Huck do? He poses as Tom Sawyer, and of course then Tom Sawyer shows up. And Tom loves it. Tom gets to pose as somebody else as well. So, while they're posing as different people, their plan is to free Jim from captivity. Now, Huck can simply do this and make it done, and they can just go back north and home. That all is too simple from Tom. Tom is a reader of books. He knows that when you free a prisoner, a thing has to be done right. And a prisoner has to go through hardships. He has to write notes to others in blood. Doesn't matter Jim has nobody to write to. He has to write these notes in blood. And it doesn't matter that Jim is being held on a first floor prison. Tom has to smuggle in a rope that is never used. And the whole thing, it leads to Jim declaring, "It is too much work to be a prisoner, and if I can help it, I never will be again." Wouldn't that be great? Today's society, if we had a warden like Tom Sawyer. Well, actually, I guess free people don't work that hard either. Even when they're free, they just float down a river. Lazy Americans. What do we do? But anyway, Tom does get Jim free. Not from his own planning, more from just dumb luck. The dogs would have caught them as they are running away with Jim, but of course the dogs know Huck and Tom, and they just smell them, lick them, and run back off. And all the boys are brought back to the place they are escaping from, Tom's aunt and uncles. And at the end, it is revealed that Jim has been free all along. Miss Watson already freed him. All of this was for naught, but that is life with Tom Sawyer. Nothing can be simple. Everything is complex. And there's not just good news for Jim. With Huck, his dad's dead. His inheritance is safe and secure. Huck is once more a rich man. When actually Jim gets rich too, which he knew he would be all along, because he's got a hairy chest. And just one of the folk tales from this book, we don't just get salt thrown over a shoulder, or nails in the shape of a cross on the bottom of your left shoe to ward off evil. We get men with hairy chests, always knowing they are gonna find fortune. It's one of those old folktale ways that are throughout this book and make it fun. And, of course, at the end, it doesn't matter that they are rich. The gladdest of all is Tom. And why? Because he has a bullet in his leg. That bullet proves that he was on an adventure. He did the adventure good and proper. And it is a bullet he would wear around his neck for the rest of his life. Now, I have to point out the one thing I found wrong with this book. No book is perfect. And for me, the one mistake I could find, it's at the start of chapter 19. While reading, you get swept away into your little fantasy world or whatever. And at the start of chapter 19, I kept coming out of the novel, and I couldn't tell why that while reading it, I kept being interrupted. It's because at the start of chapter 19, there is way too complex of a sentence. Most sentences are, on average, 12 to 19 words. A complex sentence is a long sentence that could easily be simplified down into a much shorter, just neater sentence. This sentence is way beyond your normal complex sentence. In chapter 19 at the beginning, we have a sentence that is 269 words long. It contains 27 commas, 12 semicolons, and even 4 dashes. Usually, if it doesn't take the reader out of the book, they're not a problem. Make a sentence as complex as you want. The reason I have to point this out is because it's the one time during this great narrative I was taken out of the story, and I figured out why. It is because this sentence was way too complex. So that's where the book ends. Everybody's happy. They have found their fortunes. Jim is free. Huck is free from his father. He has money. He can live on his own. And really we should enshroud this book in red, white, and blue because that's what it is about. It is about being American. It is about being free. Not just free from the old world, but free from even our own ways that are enslaving us, for lack of a better term. It is about being free, being a true American. Alright, so next week, guys, we're scheduled to do Of Mice and Men, but it has race issues as well, and I can't sit here and just talk about race issues. Not turning this into the White Power Hour. I mentioned Bradbury earlier, so tell you what. Next week, we'll do Fahrenheit 451, the masterpiece by Ray Bradbury. It'll be funner than talking about race issues yet again. But race issues aside, Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, people, if you haven't read it, please go out and do. You never know, you may just like it more than me.